There we go. Good afternoon. I'm Doug Marker, president of the City Club. Welcome to today's Friday Forum. We're featuring our debate between the Republican candidates for governor, Jason Atkinson, Kevin Mannix, and Ron Saxton. And our debate will be moderated by Greg Macpherson. Just as a reminder, please turn off your cell phones and other paging devices during the program if you would. I have a few announcements to make. Our Friday Forum next week, April 21st, is climate change and its implications for Oregon. And our speaker will be Jane Lubchenco, Distinguished Professor of Zoology and the Wayne and Gladys Valley Professor of Marine Biology at Oregon State University. Next Friday, of course, is Earth Day, and we have a number of events that our new Leaders Council is offering. There's 2 excursions into the community. The first is a tour of Far West Fiber's Hillsboro recycling facility on Saturday, April 22nd. Jeff Murray of Far West Fibers will lead the tour, and Judy Crockett of the Portland Office of Sustainable Development will discuss local and regional recycling policies. Then on Wednesday, April 26th, the New Leaders Council hosts an after-work tour of green building practices at the Gene Vollum Natural Capital Center in the Pearl District, led by Sydney Mead, Programs Manager at EcoTrust. The other New Leaders Council event I should mention is the return of Candidates Gone Wild on Monday, May 1st at the Roseland Theater. Candidates Gone Wild is an informal alternative to the typical election debates where the candidates can cut loose and things are a little bit more off the cuff. Be sure to get your tickets early because previous Candidates Gone Wild have sold out. You can purchase your tickets here at the registration table for $3 or at the City Club office. Details on all of these events can be found on our website and in your Friday bulletin. I'd like to welcome 2 new City Club members joining us today and ask them to stand as I say their name. Taya True and Chantel Hilton. Welcome to City Club. And speaking of membership, we're continuing our spring membership drive. Here to share a few words about the value of membership is Gwen Milius. Gwen is a partner with SRM Architecture and Marketing Incorporated, a member of City Club's Board of Governors, and a co-founder of our New Leaders Council. Gwen?
Thanks, Doug. I'm here to dispel 2 barriers to joining City Club that I often hear from prospective members. The first is what I call the good member barrier. When I ask non-members at City Club events why they haven't become members, they say, "Oh, I wouldn't be a good member right now." They mean that they're pressed for time, that they can't attend many of the Friday forums, that it would be difficult to work a research study or a Citizens Read book club into their schedules. I submit to them that there's no such thing as a bad City Club member, because members pay dues, and dues represent 2/3 of the City Club's budget, which is something not many people know. This is not to say that the club could fulfill its mission with nothing but inactive dues-paying members. On the contrary, but the club relies heavily on volunteers to produce research, plan these forums, and run the many other meetings and programs it hosts. But it also can't do those things without dues. I've been a City Club member for just over 9 years. I've been active in the club for 5 or 6 of those years, but I've kept paying my membership over the entire time because I believe in the club's mission, and I want to support other people in their efforts to keep the club vibrant and strong. The second barrier I hear most often is that with all of the very acute needs in our city and state today, the struggle to build affordable housing, keep our schools open and funded, feed the hungry, break down barriers to health care access, etc., spending money on City Club membership can sometimes feel sort of secondary to all of these very acute needs. I'm the first person to encourage everyone to put resources and energy towards staunching the immediate and dire situations of their fellow citizens. However, in the spirit of give a man a fish and he'll eat for a day, teach him how to fish and he'll eat for a lifetime, I submit that if we are ever to get beyond Band-Aid solutions to the great problems of our times, we must support places where our community can share ideas, gain deeper knowledge of the issues, and act for long-lasting change. And what I've realized is that if there's one place in the state where thoughtful and committed volunteers can come together to do just that, it's the City Club. And that is why I continue to be a member of this club. And that's why I ask you, if you are not a member, to please consider joining so we can continue to carry this torch. I first became a member of City Club because my father gave me a membership as a birthday gift shortly after I'd graduated from college and moved back to Portland. If you're already a member, please consider giving a similar gift to a high school or college graduate in your life. Graduation is coming up, and we're all looking for graduation presents, so think about that. Thanks so much for supporting the City Club with your membership. Please sign up in the back if you have not yet become a member, and thanks for coming today.
Thank you, Gwen. Our sponsors this quarter, who make the broadcast of City Club possible, are CH2M Hill, Schwabe Williamson and Wyatt, and West Coast Bank. Would you join me in thanking our sponsors? Well, to today's debate. Our moderator today is State Representative Greg Macpherson. Greg attended Harvard University and Georgetown Law School, and since 1975, he's been a lawyer at Stoll Reeves. He serves as chair of the Multnomah County Planning Commission, president of the 40 Mile Loop Land Trust, and on the boards of the Lake Oswego School District Foundation and Trillium Family Services. He's a longtime member of the City Club, past chair of the Research Board, and currently serves on our program committee. Greg?
Thanks, Doug. It is indeed my privilege to moderate this debate featuring the prominent Republican candidates for their party's nomination for governor. Under Oregon's current system of closed primaries, voting for the nominee for each of the major parties is limited to those registered with that party. But because the primary substantially narrows the field of candidates, all Oregonians hold a major stake in this decision. For those in our live audience, I must ask that you hold your applause until the end of the program. Let the outcome of this debate be decided by the quality of the candidates' ideas and not by the number of supporters packed into the room. Those in our radio audience should feel free to clap, whoop, and shout to their heart's content. One more introductory thought. Please be respectful of all these candidates. Our democracy depends on the willingness of talented citizens to seek public office. This debate will have several sections. First, each candidate will give a 3-minute opening statement. The opening statements will be given in alphabetical order. Our timekeeper today is Marge Kafuri. Following the opening statements, candidates will respond to questions suggested in advance of this meeting by City Club members. A subcommittee of the City Club's program committee composed the final list of questions. We will rely on the judgment of our distinguished panel of City Club members seated here to the side to decide whether or not the questions have indeed been answered by the candidates. If 2 or more of these members raise their cards indicating that they feel a question has not been answered, I will restate the question and ask the candidate to reply again in 30 seconds. On our panel, we have Coraline Kraft, Marcus Samantel, and Chris Smith. Following the City Club's questions, each candidate will have the opportunity to ask one question of one other candidate. Each candidate has the opportunity to choose both the question and the candidate to whom he wishes to direct the question. Following the rotation of candidate questions, each candidate will make a 2-minute closing statement. The closing statements will be given in reverse alphabetical order. And now the candidates. State Senator Jason Atkinson was a professional ski racer and semi-professional bicycle racer before entering politics. He was elected to the Oregon House in 1998 and to the Senate in 2000 and 2004. In the Senate, he has served as Deputy Majority Leader, Majority Whip, and as a committee chair. Mr. Atkinson serves on the boards of the Crater Lake National Park Trust, Sparrows Clubs, International United Christian Broadcasters, and the Republican Legislative Campaign Committee. He has founded several entrepreneurial ventures, and recently he published a book, What We All Wish Politicians Understood. Kevin Mannix spent much of his childhood in South America, where his father was in the U.S. Foreign Service. After graduating from the University of Virginia Law School, Mr. Mannix moved to Oregon. He has owned and operated a law practice in Salem for many years. Mr. Mannix has served 5 terms in the Oregon House of Representatives and was the Republican nominee for governor in 2002. Mr. Mannix served as chairman of the Oregon Republican Party from 2003 until stepping down last July to focus on his second run for governor. Mr. Mannix has served on many community boards and as a member of the East Salem Rotary Club. Ron Saxton grew up in Albany. here in Oregon, attended Willamette University and the University of Virginia Law School. He was elected to the Portland Public Schools Board in 1997 and served as its chair from 1998 to 2000. Additionally, Mr. Saxton co-founded the Portland Schools Foundation. As an attorney with the Ader Wynn law firm, Mr. Saxton specializes in complex business transactions involving the energy, manufacturing, and natural resource industries. He has also owned a commercial cherry farm and served as a political commentator on local television. Gentlemen, please take your positions. Mr. Atkinson, please begin with your opening statement.
Thank you very much for having me. Happy Good Friday to all of you. I told an audience earlier this morning that I spend more time with these two gentlemen with my family, but we only have 33 days of that. We actually debate each other about 3 or 4 times a week, and this is the conclusion of a very long week, so it's nice to be with you. We've been asked all kinds of things, and I've never been with the format with questions, so this will be interesting, but we've been asked everything from what kind of fruit would you be to who your favorite Democrat president is and all types of things. The best, though, was recently we had a hypothetical question asked to us, and that was this. If all 3 of you were in a car and there was a tragic accident and you all died, what would we want people, Oregonians, to say about you at your funeral? And Mr. Saxton was brilliant, very consistent. He said, I want people to know I was a tireless advocate for education. I believe very strongly in my philanthropic work. I was dead serious about the things I had done with my life, and I was an incredible fundraiser. And the question was asked of my friend Kevin, and he said, I'm a man of integrity. I'm a man who is a committed public servant, a father, a spiritual leader, not only in my family, but also in my community. And they asked me, they said, Senator Atkinson, when people look in your casket, what do you want them to say? And I said, well, I want them to look in my casket and say, hey, look, he's still moving. So we have had a tremendous campaign. My name's Jason Atkinson. I appreciate the very kind introduction. I'm running for governor simply because I have been in office long enough to know what is broken. And I have seen the partisan divide that does not get things done for the right reasons. I believe that government no longer respects people. And I believe that it's time for a new generation to lead the state of Oregon. My wife and I both put ourselves through college in Oregon. My wife then put me through graduate school here in Oregon. And we did something that most of the people we graduated with didn't do. We stayed. And we committed ourselves in business, and we committed ourselves to community. I have a 3-year-old that I'm very excited to get home to after this debate, and a campaign that I hope is driven by issues. The issues for me are funding education first, not last, protecting children, and actually having an economy and a tax structure that encourages people to invest as entrepreneurs, which we really don't have today. So I'm excited to be here. I'm excited to have all of your vote, hopefully. I know there's a few people in our party who are here, and I am very delighted that Marge would hold up a 30-second card for me. Thank you very much, and I look forward to the debate.
Mr. Mannix, your opening statement.
City Club members and guests and everybody out there in the land of public broadcasting, welcome. Thank you for the opportunity to share some thoughts and to discuss issues today about the problems and the possibilities that confront us as Oregonians. I'd like to take you back for a moment. You heard in the introduction that I was the son of a Foreign Service officer. We ended up in Virginia, and I went to the University of Virginia, and then I looked around and I realized that the University of Virginia College was all male, state university, all male. And I was a junior in the university at the time. The university finally began to consider whether or not women ought to be admitted on an equal basis. They created a university committee with all the poobahs and one undergraduate student, me. The poobahs all convened and decided that they would have a 10-year quota system, and after 10 years, they'd decide whether or not women deserved equal admission to the university. The undergraduate student on the committee wrote a minority report, a minority of 1, saying this is wrong, women should be admitted immediately on an equal basis. The long and the short of it is that the Board of Trustees was leveraged into a compromise where there was only a 2-year transition plan, and women were admitted on an equal basis by the time I left the university. There I was, an undergraduate, fighting the university system to do what is right. I have followed that approach throughout my public and private service, fighting to do what is right. And I believe there's always good consequences from that, even when you don't succeed, if you're fighting to do what is right. And now I'll shortcut to the best consequence of all. Susanna, the son of a Foreign Service officer, happened to be in Virginia and happened to be in that first coeducation class at the University of Virginia. And here we are today, almost 32 years into our marriage. We have 3 children and a grandson. And Suzanne and I have been married since 1974. We journeyed to Oregon, and there's another story there about why we chose Oregon, on our honeymoon and adopted Oregon as our home state. But one of the promises I made to Susanna in that marriage was that I would also honor her dedication to nursing. It had been her lifelong dream. And as I speak to you today, I can't introduce you to her because she's on duty at Salem Hospital. She's the nurse manager of the intensive care unit and the coronary care unit. So we've had 32 great years so far in Oregon. But I see it as my mission in this governor's race to remind Oregonians about the kinds of things that brought Susanna and me to Oregon, the things that we'll be able to do for the future, so other people will be drawn here and will stay here to make their lives and to make a great future for children and grandchildren and future generations of Oregonians.
Mr. Saxton, your opening statement.
Well, the most important thing you can know about me and the most important reason I should be governor is sitting in the back corner here, my wife, Lynn Saxton, who's the head of the Christie School. I know many of you know her. Today's Good Friday, a very important day to many of us. And I got up this morning and I sat on our front porch for a while and I watched as the sun rose through the clouds and I watched some of the flowers blooming in the yard and the trees coming out. And I thought about what a wonderful place this is and what a good life I have and how fortunate we are for so many of the things happening for us. And then I reflected on why I'm running for governor. I'm running for governor because not everything is what it ought to be. We live in a state that isn't living up to its potential, a state that's letting too many of our children down, a state that's not dealing with many of the challenges we face, a state that needs some different leadership. I'm running for governor because I love this state. I'm running for governor because I'm really frustrated with the kind of leadership we've been getting. And I'm running for governor because I'm optimistic that with good leadership, we can do so much better than we're doing. I'm running for governor to change the way state government operates in Oregon. I'm running for governor to change a generation of government bureaucrats who have failed to deliver. Thomas Edison said, if we just did the things we're capable of, we would truly astound ourselves. I want us to astound ourselves. Stop settling for less than we can do. Stop settling for second best. Let's be all we can be. It's time for leadership for a change. Think about the kind of state we would have if we had a governor who actually understood the importance of a healthy economy, who was pro-jobs, pro-economic development, pro-business. Think about the kind of state we'd have if we had a governor who understood it's about more than just putting money in. You have to manage the state. You have to spend the money well. You have to get value for what you're doing. Think about the kind of state we'd have if we had a governor who dealt with the high costs of things like Department of Human Services and the needs that people aren't being met, who dealt with PERS, who dealt with the challenges facing us. Think about the kind of state we'd have if we had a governor who understood we don't just want good schools, we want great schools. I hope we get to talk about this today. I favor great schools. We're not going to have great schools if all we talk about is the revenue side of this. We've got to talk about the quality. We've got to talk about how the money's spent. We've got to get serious. I'm running for governor because I want us to be all we can be. I'm running for governor because I'm excited about the state we live in, and it's about leadership, and we've been let down. So every 4 years, you get to decide, are we being the best we can be? If you think we're being the best we can be, that leads you to a course of what to do in the election. Ballots are going to come out in 2 weeks. But if you know, like I know, that Oregon can do better, it's time to look around for new leadership. I hope you'll support my campaign. I look forward to the rest of this lunch hour, and I hope you'll leave here picking up one of our brochures out in the hallway and deciding that this is the campaign that's going to move Oregon forward and that you're ready to help us. Thank you for having me here.
We will now move to the portion of the program where I will ask the questions prepared in advance by City Club members. Each candidate will have 60 seconds to respond to the question. Following each answer, the other candidates will have the option of a 45-second response. The candidates have not seen these questions in advance. The first question goes to Mr. Mannix. You lost 2 statewide races to Hardy Myers for Attorney General and 1 to Ted Kulingoski for Governor. Under your chairmanship, the Republican Party lost all the statewide partisan races in 2004. How are you changing your positions or your campaign strategy this time to improve your fortunes with Oregon voters?
Actually, my track record is 12 out of 15. I've had 12 contests, and I've won, 15 contests, and I've won 12. You've mentioned the 3 that I lost. I like to look at the 12 that I won, too. I also like to point out that in 2004, we did polling on the Iraq War, and we knew that that was a very negative factor in Oregon. We had a record number of Republicans turn out to vote in that election. We did the job that the party was supposed to do. We organized the party in all 36 counties. We had 89% of Republicans turn out to vote. Unfortunately, that was not enough. In terms of my policy and philosophy, this time around, I'm going to be reminding everybody that it's now Ted Sales Tax Kulingoski, which is a lot different from last time. We also have Ted's record to run on as opposed to his rhetoric, which gives me an opportunity to challenge his failure to perform these last 3.5 years. So I think that we will have some issues to take to the voters.
Mr. Saxton, a rebuttal?
Well, I don't know if it's rebuttal. It's simply every 4 years the state gets to decide if it needs a new governor, and every 4 years the party gets to decide who it'd like to have as its nominee. So my campaign is about telling people what we can do for Oregon, what I can do for Oregon, the kind of leadership I'm going to bring. So I don't think this is so much a matter of reflecting on the past. It's a matter of looking to the future and doing the best we can do.
Any comments, Mr. Atkinson?
The Republican Party, one of the problems that we have is that we attack each other in a primary and can't seem to win in the general. And both these gentlemen are friends of mine. They both are men of integrity, and I will not say anything bad. I will say this, though, that revolutions in Oregon politics happen about every 35 or 40 years. And the last time it happened, there was someone who's my age who had my experience, or slightly a little bit different. But he became governor, and he went on to serve in a way that made people proud again. And his name was Mark Hatfield. You know, I am very interested when I talk about campaigning of not being me, about serving. Not about being me, but about a movement. And so that's what I would hope that my campaign would reflect, and that's my answer, Representative.
Our next question goes to Mr. Saxton. In 2002, you ran as a moderate for governor. You said you supported the state's land use policy, noting that your wife served on LCDC. In 2002, you said that we don't need government involved in abortion. This year, you have complained about LCDC, calling it a relic. You support a ban on late-term abortions. You urge that children of illegal immigrants be barred from public school. Which is the real Ron Saxton?
Well, I'd be happy to go back and show you the premise of your question isn't true. In 2002, I was fundamentally pro-choice, but was on the record then saying I supported parental notice and I supported a ban on partial birth abortion, exactly the same position I have today. In 2002, I talked about the land use system and the fundamentals of it being good and that I supported them, but that it needed some changes. Exactly the answer you gave today. You said I said it was irrelevant. I'd love to see that quote. I don't remember ever saying that. What I've said over and over is the system started out talking about protecting natural resource lands, causing development to occur in a reasonable way. It's off track. The voters have twice passed measures saying they don't think it's working right. I support the system. I think it needs changes. If we're going to address this, now immigration, my time's up, I'm getting the flash, but this is the same Ron Saxton you always had.
Mr. Atkinson, you have 45 seconds to comment on that answer.
Thank you. From the nature of the first 2 questions, apparently the third question will be a zinger at me. I would say this. I would say that, listen, I am what you see, and I hope I'm a candidate whose heart's on their sleeve. That's how I got involved in politics, by being outspent and out-endorsed the first time. And I have really believed in the servant model of leadership, which is the best way to do it, is get your fingers dirty and serve people. I hope that if you would look at me, you would see consistency and credibility. But I have to do the same thing before the City Club as I did in Hillsborough this morning, as we did on the coast last week, is I have to get over the skepticism that all of you have. Oregonians are pessimistic about the direction, but they're optimistic by nature. That's what we have to fix.
Mr. Mannix, you have 45 seconds to comment if you wish.
As Popeye said to olive oil, I am what I am. People have a pretty good sense of where I stand on the issues, not just from my private sector experience, where I've served for 23 years as an attorney for small business, but my track record is out there, and people can evaluate it because I served 10 years in the legislature, and as I'll remark later today, I have performance. I have a track record where I've been tested, where I have a voting record, and where I've achieved results, and I think that there is a certain consistency. But I would add quickly that consistency can be the hobgoblin of little minds. We do need to give politicians an opportunity to grow and change, and perhaps that's what we are seeing in terms of metamorphosis with other candidates.
Mr. Atkinson, your campaign website describes your background in religious broadcasting. Do you favor the teaching of either creationism or intelligent design, along with evolution, in the science classrooms of Oregon's public schools?
It's an interesting connection. I think those decisions should be made at a local level. I think there's room to have either both or none at all, quite honestly. But I think that those decisions should not be a mandate from Salem, where we have legislators say, have the creation or evolution debate. It was a Scopes monkey trial that we had many years ago that America is still evenly divided on, and I certainly don't think it's going to be the Oregon legislature that fixes that. If a local community decides at school board they want to teach both sides, that's fine. But I really don't see a connection in your question between that and my background in broadcasting, but that's my answer.
Okay, Mr. Mannix, you have 45 seconds to comment if you wish.
The philosophical question is whether or not the state ought to be mandating any particular kind of educational program at that level in the schools. And my philosophical response is that it should not, that our local school boards ought to be making the decisions about what is taught. Yes, we need standards for education, basic standards of advancement, standardized testing to make sure the schools are doing their job. But I don't want Big Brother State reaching into the classroom. I want the local school board to be making decisions about what are the appropriate academic programs. And I do want to emphasize an opportunity for schools to have full and open discussion as to scientific issues. And that's where I think it's important to allow our teachers to teach, to engage in open discourse with the students, and not to handcuff them as to any particular didactic approach.
Mr. Saxton, do you wish to comment?
I have no rebuttal to Mr. Atkinson.
Okay, our next question goes to Mr. Mannix. Since 1994, when you helped pass Ballot Measure 11's mandatory sentences, Oregon's prison population has more than doubled to about 13,000 and is projected to grow to 18,000 by 2011. Last year, the general fund budget for corrections was increased 32% to cope with additional inmates, and more such increases lie ahead. As governor, would you seek a tax increase to cover this rising cost, or take funding from education and health care, which along with public safety consume nearly all the general fund?
Absolutely not. In fact, public safety has to share a priority along with education and access to health care and all the other things we need to do in government. The fact is that as I speak to you today, the percentage of the state budget that goes to corrections, 7 to 8%, depending on how you want to read it, is the same as it was 10 and 12 years ago. Yes, the state budget has grown and corrections spending has grown in accordance with that, but let's look at how we use those budget dollars. When it comes to violent crime, covered by Measure 11, we've had the most successful reduction of violent crime in Oregon compared to all 50 states. Yes, a 44% reduction in violent crime since Measure 11 went into effect, #1 in the nation for reduction of violent crime. And that meant 30 to 40,000 Oregonians were not murdered, raped, assaulted, robbed, or subjected to arson, because we put bad people behind bars while we addressed other aspects of the criminal justice system. I stand by Measure 11.
Mr. Saxton, do you wish to comment?
I think this is one of the most fundamental questions of the campaign. It's the false choice too many leaders, our current leaders, hold out between cutting service or raising taxes. The answer is no to both of them. We've got to talk about how we're going to run the state differently, how we're going to spend the money smarter. I wish we had time to go into detail here. This isn't just rhetoric. Our state has one of the most expensive state governments for delivering the least service. We need to talk more about that. Do not get trapped into thinking this is about we've got to raise taxes or cut the services.
Mr. Atkinson, do you wish to comment?
I wasn't going to comment, but I think that this is a great discussion point. I believe fundamentally that you have to force, by only the executive can, force the legislature to pass budgets on time. As a senator, I worked on a bill to force the K-12 budget to be passed within 81 days or all the politicians lose their pay. I believe fundamentally that if we were to actually do what every Republican, Democrat, and Independent, House, Senate, and Governor, 91 Oregonians says, and we were to pass and make K-12 a priority, and it were to pass first within 100 days, you then can have honesty about, and I'm sure we'll talk about education, but then you can actually address public safety second. It's just how the building works. And I think this is a key point. One of the problems that we have in state government about credibility is we do not manage cash flow.
Our next question goes to Mr. Saxton. The payday loan business in Oregon has mushroomed in recent years, with annual interest rates exceeding 400% and many borrowers following deeper in debt, taking out new loans to pay off old ones. You have been quoted as favoring the operation of the free market in this area. Do you oppose limits on payday loan interest and regulation of terms, no matter how the industry behaves?
No matter how the industry behaves? My point on this issue is not every problem needs to be solved by government. Now, I understand most states have restrictions, understand cities have restrictions. I'm not against the public deciding there are reasonable restrictions, but I don't think government is the answer to all of these. The market says these are financial transactions that no one else wants to do. Nothing is stopping groups from cashing these checks at a lower interest rate. Nothing is stopping businesses, it's not stopping charities, it's not stopping civic organizations. So, yes, I think the market is the better answer. No, I'm not going to go throw my body in front of this if people have a different opinion, but the fundamental point here is there are a number of things in our society that could be different. I do not think government steps in to address all of them.
Mr. Atkinson, you have 45 seconds to comment.
Thank you. I think that payday loans are usury. And I think that they abuse people who are who have financial difficulties. When the original bill came through the Oregon Senate, I was up for a week trying to decide what the right thing to do was. And the bill that came through was ultimately a cap. And I didn't agree with the cap because what we were doing is we were sanctioning a usury rate. I was just briefed before I walked in here about the special session, and I am understanding that we are going to have a payday loan type of a bill on the floor, and if it meets my criteria of allowing the market work but also does not have usury, I will support it.
Mr. Mannix, you have 45 seconds.
We need to be addressing the essential question here. Why are people driven to such desperation, and what are we doing as a society to help them? We're talking about interest rates on payday loans. What about the people that are asking for those loans? What are we doing as a society to reach out to them and help them? I haven't heard a discussion about that. It's all well and good to talk about the interest rates. That's an appropriate discussion, don't get me wrong. But why aren't we talking about how we're going to reach out and help people who are in such desperate circumstances that they will accept those kinds of financial terms? Where are we as a society when we don't discuss those issues? We need to be discussing those issues, and unfortunately, I don't get to do it in the next 5 seconds, but please be thinking about that, please.
Our next question goes to Mr. Atkinson. You advocate eliminating Oregon's income tax on capital gains, which would open a hole of about $500 million in the next 2-year state budget while benefiting the wealthiest Oregonians. Please describe specifically what replacement tax you would add or what state services you would cut to balance the budget after the loss of capital gains revenue.
Great question, and it's a false choice. We learned in the special session number whatever it was, 2 or 3, that if we reduced the capital gains, right then it was going to cost state government, on those numbers, I think it was 2002, $30 million. But we also knew that by the revenue forecasting office, that $172 million would be pumped into the economy. To answer your question, I do think that Oregon having the second highest capital gains tax in America is wrong. Number 2, I think it is part of the reason why we have such a high growth in Clark County, Washington. And I would not replace it, to answer your question, with another tax. I think that as we no longer have confidence not only in our tax structure, but it's a false choice to say if we hang on to a tax that everyone avoids, that we're going to be damaging schools. The fact of the matter is the capital gains tax, some people can't afford to get around it, but it also hurts first-time homeowners. And that, quite frankly, I'm against.
Mr. Mannix, you have 45 seconds.
I've been careful not to advocate an immediate elimination of the capital gains tax because of the concerns you addressed in the question. Instead, I've called for a reduction of the capital gains tax from 9% to 5% because we have solid economic studies conducted by, among others, Associated Oregon Industries, where economists have shown that within 2 years, the actual revenues will be higher as a result of increased investment in the state and increased job production. That's the kind of smart tax policy we need, where we're adjusting taxes to enhance our economy, but we need to be careful that we maintain a revenue stream to address the felt needs of our citizens.
Mr. Saxton, you have 45 seconds.
I absolutely believe our high capital gains tax costs our state money. It does not provide revenue. What happens is that people with significant capital gains transactions leave the state to avoid paying the tax. Once they're gone, the monies are not reinvested in Oregon to create new jobs or new economic activity. Once they're gone, they're no longer paying income taxes here. This is one of those very, very short-term things where you've got to get your head above it and look at the longer horizon and realize that in a state that has one of the lowest investment rates in America, we've got to have a policy that says we want people to have capital gains transactions and stay here and reinvest the money. I favor getting rid of the tax.
Mr. Mannix, Governor Kulongoski is leading an effort to require the sale of cleaner new cars in Oregon in order to combat global warming. You have opposed that clean car requirement. Is that because you believe global warming is not a problem, or because you think state regulation should not be part of the solution?
No, I oppose it because I don't think the governor should impose this program by fiat, but should work cooperatively with our legislative leadership to come up with an Oregon solution, not transplant a California solution and impose it on Oregonians by a backdoor administrative regulation. It is the process that I object to. We need to have a governor who will work with our legislative leadership to come up with Oregon solutions that Oregonians have consensus on so that we can address clean air issues and also the other issues, the fiscal impact of this kind of measure, what are our alternatives, and by the way, do we want to allow biodiesel cars because the California plan doesn't? I want to have an Oregon conversation where Oregon representatives make this decision through the democratic process, not the governor signing off by executive fiat on a California solution.
Mr. Saxton, you have 45 seconds to comment.
Well, I disagree with the governor on all 3 points that Mr. Mannix mentioned. I think the process is wrong for the governor to do this by fiat. I do think the state-by-state approach to this kind of issue is not the right approach. And I think the real impact of this is that it increased the costs for too many Oregonians of the vehicles. So I think it's a policy that is a nice gimmick sounding that has very little impact except for hurting Oregonians.
Mr. Atkinson, you have 45 seconds.
Well, I was in the legislature when we watched the governor go over the will of the legislative branch, and I do understand the governor's running for re-election. But the fact of the matter is that Toyota came out with a hybrid because of the market, not because of the California emission standards. As I travel all over Oregon, I have a very hard time going to someone in Burns and saying a new truck price is going to cost X thousands of dollars more because of something for politics. I have been very interested in my time in politics, not only with the Crater Lake license plate that hopefully all of you have purchased, but also several other things that change the conservation ethic. That's really how you do it. You have to give the credit away, but I think that doing things like the California admission standards for a political race, which could hurt our economy, especially in Eastern Oregon, is wrong.
Mr. Saxton, overwhelming evidence shows that illegal immigrants come to the U.S. for higher paying work than they can find in their home countries. It follows that we cannot stem the tide of illegal immigrants without cracking down on those who hire them. Do you favor new penalties and tougher enforcement measures against farmers and others who hire illegal immigrants?
It's important, and you did do it, that we remember we're talking about illegal immigration, not immigration. Too often this debate has confused the two and is very disrespectful of people who legally immigrate to this country and who deserve our respect and our support. The issue is, as governor, what impact do I have on this? As governor, I don't control the policies, but I'll tell you, this is about enforcing laws. Our system, what distinguishes democracy from other forms of government is we're a system of laws. And So the notion that there are some laws that are optional, that people don't have to follow, I don't understand that. We enforce the laws. Now, the law is that people are not supposed to come into this country unless they have come in through the right process with the right rules and gone through the right method. That's the law that needs to be enforced. It's the law that Congress needs to resolve, and I support them doing that.
Our question enforcement panel has indicated that you haven't answered the question, which I'll restate, not the premise, but the question, which is, do you favor new penalties and tougher enforcement measures against farmers and others who hire illegal immigrants?
I do not favor the state taking those kind of actions, and I have no opinion on federal policy here.
Mr. Atkinson, you have 45 seconds to comment.
Answer to the question is yes, I do support that. I also support, as governor, the ability to stop the loophole we have of people abusing the law. It is true. We have a problem, especially at the DMV and some various other state agencies, with giving away state services to people who are not residents of Oregon or not American citizens. But the problem that we face, for years I've been working with agriculture to get a guest worker program through. Now, what does that mean? Well, in the 20-second sound bites of talk radio, that means all kinds of terrible things. But the fact of the matter is that employers right now, the burden is on them, and they have to be able to know who they're hiring, and the only way to do that is to move to one system, which I do support. I also do not support the speech that says, you know what, let's look and make sure everyone is illegal and treat them that way. I think that's bad for my party.
Mr. Mannix, you have 45 seconds to comment.
2 tracks. Penalties should never exceed the opportunity to comply, and what we need is a comprehensive federal solution the state can cooperate with, where employers have worker visa programs which are straightforward, which are understandable, where they can comply, and where they can hire workers legally and appropriately under a worker visa program. When you have that in place, then you also can morally come forward and say, we have tough penalties for those who violate the system. But right now, we have a system full of holes that is not working, that's not being enforced. You should not impose penalties against one group unless you are changing that system to make it workable for all concerned. Then I think we can have a balanced process here.
Mr. Atkinson, the Portland Public Schools struggle with the costs of operating a big city school district while receiving the same amount per pupil under the state school allocation formula as other districts. As governor, would you seek an additional allocation of funding for Portland schools under the formula, or seek to remove barriers to local funding solutions?
The answer is yes and yes. I'm trying to... Okay, now start my 60 seconds. We've been doing that for 8 years in the Oregon legislature. Every year it's like, well, we have to do an extra bailout for Portland Public Schools. I mean, it's the constant debate. And the problem is that the debate in Salem, the credibility of this has nothing to do with children. If it did, we wouldn't pass that budget 208 days into a session. 208 days. Florida passes their entire budget in 60, and it takes us 208. The only way to instill credibility back into the system is to pass K through 12 first. Only the governor can do that. And again, take everyone who's in politics out for a second, go to Chalkboard Project and do exactly what they're asking us to do, which is open book. Make sure every school district is using the same set of numbers when they build a budget. That's the only way to be honest. That's the only way to really analyze it. Right now, the system is broken, lobbyists, delay, and no one's on the same set of numbers.
Mr. Mannix, comments?
I got a question mark.
Oh, I'm sorry. Okay.
Sorry.
Do we have a majority of question marks?
Great.
You have 30 seconds.
More time. What part specific? Would I allow local option? Yes, I've always supported local option in my time in the Oregon legislature. But what I don't support, what's being proposed right now for the special session is gap bonding, where the Portland residents have voted at one time to tax themselves for Portland public schools. But it's not popular enough to pass right now, so that we want the legislature to do it. Well, people from Klamath or Lake or Harney County should not be voting to raise taxes for someone in Portland. That's taxation without representation. It has to be a local option.
Mr. Mannix, do you wish to comment?
I think the problem that confronts the Portland Public Schools is a problem that confronts some other public schools, but not most, which is a shrinking school population because of other policies in the community that are causing families to flee from the community. Separate issue. But as to the school funding issue, which is the particular issue in front of us, The state has been far too rigid in its school funding formula, and it has punished school districts that have been creative in trying to come up with alternative solutions. Witness the timber-dependent districts that got federal funding to replace lost timber revenues, and all of a sudden we punished them by saying we're going to run all that money through the same formula to everybody. So those who showed initiative and found some additional dollars didn't get to keep them in their own school districts. We need to back away from that and reward initiative at the local level, not punish it.
Mr. Saxton, you have 45 seconds.
I'll talk fast to hit the two pieces of it. Does Portland have costs other school districts don't have? Yes. Do some other school districts have costs other school districts don't have? Yes. The state formula that lumps it all together and deal with averages is a bad formula. It's a bad approach to how we fund schools, and I will change it. The second part, has Portland done everything it can to address its costs? No. Park Rose, David Douglas next door capped their insurance costs at $680 a month. Bend School District caps its at $680 a month. Portland's healthcare costs are uncapped and are over $1,000 a person a month. Portland has too many buildings open. I was on the school board 10 years ago calling for closing some of these. I understand the problems of neighborhood schools, but you can't spend the money on buildings when you need to be spending it on children. So Portland's got to do a better job, and we have to recognize it does have some unique costs.
During this portion of the program, each candidate will have the opportunity to ask one other candidate a question. Questions must be asked in 30 seconds. The candidate to whom the question is directed will have 1 minute to respond, after which the questioner will have the option of a 30-second rebuttal. We will begin with Mr. Saxton.
Well, these questions are always designed to sort of create confrontation and look for attacks, and I don't think that's appropriate, and I'm not going to engage in that. The person I'd like to ask a question to isn't here today. That's Governor Kulongoski, who needs to be defending his record. So I'll use my chance to turn to Senator Atkinson and say that both of us have called for the adoption of Jessica's Law. The legislature will be in session next week. Tell me what you think we can do to get Jessica's Law through.
That was a compliment. Thank you. Thank you very much. It's Easter. I held a press conference last week and said if the governor calls us back, it is my goal to get Jessica's Law passed. I don't care who gets the credit, Republican, Democrat, pass it as is. Most other states have passed it. It's a law that protects children. So what I plan to do is I will get that law passed if we're there. Representative, I hope not to see you next week, but I think we are. I think we have been called back. But it is a bill that really should have been passed in the last legislature. It passed through the House. It came to the Senate, and partisan politics, for some reason, stopped it. But I am very committed to that. As I travel around, I am amazed at how many parents do not feel safe knowing that we have a revolving door with sexual predators in the state of Oregon, and it has to stop.
Mr. Saxton, you have the option of a 30-second response.
I'll just say as I travel around the state, it's clear to me that a strong majority of Oregonians want this to happen and that it was frustrated during the last legislative session, and I would call on our governor and all legislators to make this happen next week.
Mr. Atkinson, your question.
Well, thank you. It is Easter. I'm starting to feel that for some of those zingers, this was like a dentist appointment without Novocaine, but thank you. I'm very interested in policy and what is the best policy, whoever gets the credit. I would like to ask a question of Mr. Mannix. Kevin has talked about an idea called Teacher Corps, and I think that is an idea that needs to make sure we bring it up. So could you explain what Teacher Corps is?
Thank you. The Teacher Corps is a proposal to bring retired teachers on a volunteer basis back into the schools on a part-time basis to allow them to perform as teachers, to mentor younger teachers, to teach additional class sections, to reduce class size in exchange for their medical and dental insurance premium. And that's all, no other compensation. It would give us a chance to improve our schools. It gives the retired teachers a chance to meet a very big expense that they confront before they qualify for Medicare. And at the same time, it gives us the benefit of experienced teachers who will have some flexibility where they can work. And this would not be part of the school's budget. It would be a separate Teacher Corps where the state would send out the teachers at the request of the districts. And again, it would be an all-volunteer program. It's designed, again, to look for a win-win solution to help our schools, our retirees, and guarantee that more people have got the health care insurance that they need, to answer your question.
Well, Mr. Atkinson has 30 seconds to comment on it. If you can.
I will. I think there's a lot of great ideas out there in the market. That's a very interesting idea. And I also want to tell all of you and everyone listening on radio who's clapping, hopefully, to go to sparrowclubs.org. This is my shameless plug part of the show. It's a nonprofit that my wife and I are very involved with. It's kids helping other kids in medical crisis, and we're just getting started in Portland Public Schools, and it's great. Kids get the credit, changes kids' hearts, and it's very unique, similar to what Mr. Mannix just described.
Mr. Mannix, your question.
I have a question for Senator Atkinson, and I didn't tell him about this ahead of time. You've talked about one of your heroes at one of our recent debates, a hero who also has something to do with our national park system. And would you explain to me why you chose Teddy Roosevelt as your hero?
This is the gift that keeps giving. Teddy Roosevelt was a trust buster. Teddy Roosevelt was very independent. Teddy Roosevelt stood up to special interests. He was the first American president to ride in a car. 4 blocks later, the first one to be in a car wreck. He fathered the Crater Lake National Park. 100 years later, I passed a Crater Lake license plate, which helps kids use the classroom in the park. Nothing gives me a bigger thrill than be in downtown Portland and see my Crater Lake license plate with a Carrie Edwards bumper sticker on it. But I think that he was young when he got involved in politics. He was an idealist. He was a strong leader. And he was a Republican who was very interested in conservation. And for that reason, he is, I feel like we're kind of like on a Broadway show here. So that's my answer, Mr. Mannix. Did I have any question marks?
Mr. Mannix, do you wish to comment?
Yeah, I'm going to tap dance over to the right here. No, the whole, people can't see this if they're listening on radio. It's just like, is this a Broadway show? My comment is I appreciated the remarks that Senator Atkinson made about Teddy Roosevelt, and the reason I brought it up is I think we sometimes need to remind ourselves to uplift our thinking and to look at the horizon ahead instead of just looking at the dirt in front of us when it comes to the political process. Let's remember the great things that great people have done in our society over the years and challenge ourselves, as Senator Atkinson has challenged himself, to look to heroes for vision.
There's one more prepared question, which will be asked of all 3 candidates with 45 seconds for response. And it was prepared in advance, so it's not actually suggested by the last question, but you might think so. If Tom McCall were alive and active in Oregon politics today, would he be a Republican, and why or why not? You have 45 seconds, Mr. Mannix.
He'd be a Republican because today, the Republican Party is changing. We are reaching out. We are growing relative to the Democratic Party because we are expanding our horizon. And he would take a look at the spunkiness of Republicans in the state and say, you know, these folks want to reform things. And they are a party that's generating new ideas. Not all the ideas will be accepted by all people all the time, but Tom McCall was a spunky person who was willing to present new ideas. Which party has been most aligned with the ballot measures which have passed in recent years? The Republican Party. Not because we know it all, but because we know how to reach out, we know how to listen, and we know how to be responsive. And I think Tom McCall would say today the Republican Party is going to take this land use planning system, the garden we planted 35 years ago, it's never been weeded or pruned, and the Republican Party isn't going to destroy the garden, but we're going to weed it and prune it so that it's healthier.
Mr. Saxton, you have 45 seconds.
Well, people forget, absolutely Tom McCall would be a Republican today. People forget when you look back, Tom McCall was actually pretty conservative on social issues, and he supported the war that was going on when he was governor. He'd probably fit in real well. But when we talk about the issues that confront us today, Tom McCall found creative ways to solve problems. Instead of just talking about pour in more money or let's start more and more government programs, he talked about how do we find creative ways to take care of our special state with its wonderful environment and its resources. And I think he'd be a Republican. He'd be proud to be a Republican.
Mr. Atkinson, you have 45 seconds.
Yes, 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 yes. I get often asked to speak to incoming freshman lawmakers, both parties, and I always tell them to go buy the book Fire at Eden's Gate and read it as a primer of why you are here. Certainly the beach bill, certainly LCDC. I was more thrilled. One of my best political accomplishments was when I passed the Keep Oregon Rivers Clean Act. It's a volunteer line recycling pickup bill that gets this junk out of salmon habitat and out of birds' nests. And you know what? It was called the bottle bill of this century, which I'm kind of excited about. But the last time we addressed labor relations was when Cesar Chavez and when Tom McCall were in Salem. We have not addressed, there's a lot of unfinished business left, and yes, he would be a Republican representative.
Thank you, gentlemen. We will now move to the final portion of the program, 2-minute closing statements from each candidate. These will be given in reverse alphabetical order. We will begin with Ron Saxton.
Well, as you see, it's hard to talk about serious issues in sound bites. We've tried today, but it's always difficult. So I urge you to go to our website, votesaxton.com, read a little more. If you don't see the answer to your question, email us and ask. My wife, Lynn, always tells me that I don't smile enough when I'm in these events. But I'll tell you, sometimes I do get serious. What we're talking about is serious. I am disappointed with what's happening in our state, with the leadership we're facing. When the governor gave his State of the State speech, he boasted that we're spending $1 billion more on K through 12 today than when he became governor. But I'll tell you, there's not a single school district in Oregon that thinks it's better off today than it was then. We're not going to get where we need to go if we aren't combining better management, better leadership, better vision for how we're accomplishing programs, and not just always thinking that more money solves things. More money helps, management helps solve things, and we've got to get on top of it. So there are many examples we could have covered today. We didn't talk about what's happening at DHS. We didn't talk about a lot of the other challenges facing us as a state. But I come back to where I started. Every 4 years, you get to ask that fundamental question. Are you happy where we're going? Out of 100 ninth graders, only 69 of them graduate from high school in Oregon. Only 15 of them get a college degree. I'm not satisfied with that. That doesn't work for me. We have half as many state police as we used to. The crime lab isn't up to what it used to be. You wonder why we have a huge meth problem and property crime problems in our state? I'm not happy with that. That's not good enough for me. We can do better. We can absolutely do better. And you decide which of us you think is the answer to that. There are clear differences between us in our experience and our style and the approach we bring and our ability to pull things together. But I urge you to decide we need some changes in this state. We need different leadership. We can do better. I ask for your support. Please help us. Thank you.
Mr. Mannix, your closing.
When people take a look at good candidates, as I believe you have good candidates in front of you, you hear, wow, they're identifying problems. Wow, they're promising how they're going to solve those problems in the future. Well, the one thing I bring to this campaign, in addition to identifying problems and talking about promises for the future, is I have a track record of performance. Take a look back and see that in the past, as I've identified problems, I've worked hard with Democrats and Republicans in the legislative process, yes, sometimes the initiative process, to come up with solutions that work. When victims of crime came forward and said that we want to be protected better by having predators put behind bars, we did do Measure 11. At the same time, when parents came to me and said the adoption process takes too long, it's too expensive, it's too bureaucratic, how can we adopt kids more swiftly and more easily? I pushed through adoption reform legislation. When victims of domestic violence came forward and said the laws are too narrow, they're not doing enough to protect women and children, I reformed the Family Abuse Protection Act as a legislature, bringing in that legislation to better protect people. When victims of stalking came forward and said, help protect us, I wrote Oregon's anti-stalking law. Look to the website, look to my past performance, you'll see that in working with legislators to accomplish results, I reminded them that we're Oregonians first. We need to work to help our citizens. And with that kind of dynamic approach, we can fulfill the promises of the campaign trail. We can bring Oregonians together, understanding that, yes, we can do it if we'll stop the partisan bickering and reach out. And that's the kind of governor that I'll be. Look to Kevin for Oregon or Kevin for Governor. Either one will work. We've got all those on the website. Check out my past performance, but then take a look at the promises. Practical things that we can do to do better for Oregonians. That's what this campaign is about. I invite the Republicans to support me in the primary. I invite the rest of you to support me, assuming I'm successful in the primary, in the general election. And thank you for letting me come here today to share these thoughts with you.
Mr. Atkinson, your closing statement.
Thank you. You know, I drive about 1,500 miles a week. I speak all over Oregon, and you can get frustrated when you read about how rotten you are in newspapers or hear about it in some of the other avenues. A friend of mine called me and he said, you know what, Jason? Do you have any idea what a privilege it is to run for governor? And you know what? Our campaign is not about me. It's really about a movement. And I would hope that through all the pessimism and all of the folded arms that are out there, that you would ask yourself, what kind of organ do you want to have? Yes, it's true. A national news article said the Atkinson campaign is young enough to dream and experienced enough to deliver. Well, I would hope that's true. I would hope within the first 100 days, if we don't get Jessica's law passed this week, we get it done in my administration. I would hope that we would break the partisan death grip we've got on K through 12 and pass that first. I would hope we'd have fundamental change within 100 days that has to do with our tax policy. More than anything, I hope more people like me can stay in Oregon, afford to buy a home, and start a company. If I don't address home ownership and the capability and the confidence that people have, not only in their government and their school, none of this matters. We were in a debate the other day, and I'll finish with this because this is really where my mind's at. You see what this is? That's a little kid's bow tie. I just bought that as I walked over here. I was at Nordstrom's a little early. My 3-year-old son's going to wear this on Easter Sunday with his dad. We're wearing seersucker suits to church. It'll be quite a episode. But you know what? This race is about a 3-year-old for me. It really is. That's the reason why I'm in politics. Do I believe in servant leadership? Do I believe in leaving it better than I found it? Do I believe in being idealistic and leading on my heart? Absolutely. Our campaign, AtkinsonForGovernor.com. The most popular link on there is Stephanie First Lady, which doesn't say much about me, but I would appreciate all of your support, and thank you very much for having me at the City Club.
Let's show our appreciation for all 3 of these candidates.
I'd like to thank our candidates for an enlightening debate, thank our panel, our moderator, Greg Macpherson, and we're adjourned.